Okay. It's still morning. Good morning. Good morning once more. So Yavia said this is a very important topic. It means you must listen, isn't it? My name is Bob, and I want to talk to us today about something with a very long name. Obviously, most of the topics we've been discussing have got very long names, so this is another one. Something we are calling the new gTLD program next round. That's a lot of things. And that first slide has other things on it. If you look at the very top, you are seeing something there, new gTLD program next round. Something towards the other side, we always had included an inclusive internet. So we want to try and bring all this discussion together. And really glad to be here, obviously, and to share with you on this project and this initiative that is currently being implemented within ICANN. And interesting that it follows what Carlos discussed in the morning. So this is one of the products or outcomes or outputs of a policy process that took a very long time, almost 5 years, to get to this level. So this is something that's gone through the community, the bottom-up process, the multi-stakeholder process, received detailed inputs, very diverse inputs over many years, went to the board, got approved, and handed to the staff to implement. So this is a full circle of how a multi-stakeholder process and the internet or the global internet community works within the ICANN ecosystem. And hopefully I will try and clarify. It has a number of things. Some of them might appear technical or confusing, but do indulge me, and please feel free to ask questions, whatever they are, and we'll endeavor to answer the best we can. So if I could get the next slide, unless I can move it myself. Was that me? That was me. Okay, Wayne confirms that was me. So this is the agenda outline. So first of all, I want us to just remind ourselves of the ecosystem. ICANN is always misspelled. So when I'm asked, where do you work or who do you work for, and I say ICANN, and most of the time when you read and you check how someone has written that spelling, you can suspect how that spelling will always not be this one. So you have ICANN, and one of those N's is names, and the other N is numbers. And yesterday we discussed a lot about one of the N's, which is numbers. And so today is more about names. Now what you realize is that each of those N's have got its own ecosystem around it. If you went to the numbers ecosystem, you'll find the RIRs, which work in a very different way compared to the names ecosystem. And how is the names ecosystem organized? And you can juxtapose this against the numbers ecosystem, and you'll find very different, groups of players. And somehow, and you could be on both sides, but aligned to each of the arrangement in the respective ecosystem. So if you're on the numbers ecosystem, then you're talking about RIR, you're talking about ISPs, you're talking about members. If you come to the names ecosystem, then you have a registry operator, then a registrar, and a registrant. On the numbers ecosystem, the final end user probably does nothing. to receive the number on their device. So if you went online today, obviously all of us are online today, isn't it? Who applied for their IP address on their phone or their laptop before it went online? None of you, isn't it? But if you have a domain name, you are the same end user, you have a domain name, there's no way you have it by default or automatically. You must have done something to have it. While on the number side, probably you did nothing and you have a number. Maybe what you need to buy was maybe a SIM card. So the processes are very different, but they work very closely together. So this will be a little journey on the numbers, on the names side, and both of these is what ICANN is about, names and numbers. They're just numbers. Is Elaine here? Is there Elaine Ayana or Ayana Elaine? Yes. So this is how the name side is organized. And we'll look at my right. This is my left, this side. For this particular presentation, we'll focus more on the registry operator. But I'm saying that the entire ecosystem goes all the way to registrant. You'll also notice the naming structure here. All of them are R's. I promise I did not come up with that. I found it as well. Maybe the fathers might enlighten us why they decided to use all R's in this process. So in that structure, from the registry operator to the registrant, who is the final end user for a name, at any one particular time, there is a series of agreements or contracts that connect all of them all the way to ICANN. Can this point? Okay. So on my, this is still left. On your extreme left is ICANN, and on your extreme right is the registrant. And in between, you have these various players that I talked about in the names ecosystem. And I'm saying this because this particular session is about the DNS ecosystem or the names ecosystem. And sometimes we jump to discussing a component of the ecosystem without really appreciating the entire structure and value chain within the ecosystem. So we have different players here. And between each of them, there are various agreements and contracts that link them together all the way to ICANN. So I will not go into much detail here, but you can be a registry operator, meaning you have a particular agreement with ICANN. You can also be a registry operator without any agreement with ICANN if you're talking about ccTLDs. Obviously, it goes without saying that we have very broadly 3 categories of top-level domain names, or TLDs. We have gTLDs, which is the subject of this presentation, which is the short form of generic top-level domain names. We have ccTLDs. Carlos talked about the CCNSO, which is country codes, and country codes are for jurisdictions or autonomous economies that have been recognized by the UN. And you have another category of TLDs that can either be gTLDs or ccTLDs. And we call them IDNs, or internationalized domain names, meaning it is either a generic name or a country code name that is written in a different script other than Latin script. Latin script is 0 to 9 or A to Z. So if you have a domain name that is not written in A to Z or 0 to 9, for example, in Arabic or in Chinese, then we call it an IDN, an internationalized domain name. So those are the 3 broad categories of domain names. But for this purpose, we are talking about gTLDs for our guidance. So the new gTLD program, next round, So when I see next round, I ask myself, was there a last round? And if yes, when was it? Who knows when the last round was? Anyone? So Lawrence is disqualified from any answers. Unlucky. Yes, when was the last round? He thinks it is 2012. Who has a more recent memory? Because that sounds like a very long time ago. Some people were not born in this room. I don't know if Aziz was born by then. So there was the last round, and it is important for our context so that you can also understand our struggle with this title, why we have a new gTLD program and could not stop there. Because there is something in 2012 which is still a new gTLD program. So how do you differentiate both new gTLD programs? So we could only call this current one, this one, next round, not even current round. We call it next round. If you went to a better English class, you can also help us with this title. We are still open to comments and feedback. So the top level names, obviously this is something we know. This is what a TLD is. And for this particular session, we're talking about gTLD specifically. And I've already indicated that we have, gTLDs in other ways of writing other than Latin. And Latin is A to Z or 0 to 9. So therefore, you can today represent TLDs in other writing scripts. And there is a very important objective around that, about inclusivity. So I want to concentrate a little bit on this particular slide, which talks about the expansion of the DNS. You see at the middle, 1,200 plus gTLDs. Well, we could choose to write a specific number there because that statistic is specific, but it's easier to say more than 1,200 domain names. So this happened in 2012, which, as he answered, is our reference for the last round. So in 2012, ICANN overseen the expansion, or we are calling it the largest expansion that has ever happened in the recent history of the domain name space. And out of that, a number of things happened. Now, before this, and why we are saying this was the largest expansion, there had been other, should we call them proof of concepts or initiatives to expand the domain name space. Just like the internet has been expanding since its early days, so has been domain names. So by the year 2012, we had 22, what we're calling legacy TLDs. So your list of com, net, info, edu, we had a list of up to 22. So you can see here, I can't point. So that list was 22 up to 2012. And you'll also notice that by then, those names were largely 3 letters. Now, after 2012, you now have 2 new features. You have names in scripts other than Latin, meaning Chinese, Arabic, Cyrillic, and other ways of writing, but you now also have longer names. Now, this was in response to the request from you, the community, that you needed more choice to register, names of interest. So if I wanted bob.com and it doesn't exist, maybe I could register bob.africa. So that responds to the need of the community to expand the choice available to them. Remember, this is in addition to country code top-level domain names. So you could actually say, in theory today, that we have, give or take, maybe 1,500 top-level domains available to the global internet community to choose from, depending on your need. And with this, the community still failed and took almost 5 years to deliberate and approve further expansion of the same namespace to even add more names over and above what we already have today. This is already existing, but the community has chosen to expand this even further. Hence, the basis for this next round that we are today discussing. So ICANN is going through a process to implement that decision of the community, and this is what it entails. I hope it works. Wayne. Okay. Yes, this one. And so at a very high level, why would someone think of registering or having a top-level name? Remember, we're talking about a registry operator. There are a number of things, and there are people in the room here that are more competent to talk about this than me. But from our perspective, at a very high level, registering a TLD depends on really what is your motivation or your context. And context here, you could be a government, you could be a brand. A brand here is, let me use the brand club. Is there a club in this country? Club. Anyone heard about club? Where are you looking at me suspiciously? So when I say club, what comes to your mind? Okay, club can be a beer. What else? So I like what you think of first when I say club. But I'm saying I meant the other club where I come from. So the context for registering a TLD really vary. Not everyone registers domains, say, to monetize, which is also part of motivations for registering domain names. For those of you who have registered, domain names, maybe you have a .africa name, a .com name, you probably purchased that domain name, or you are paying for it annually. That is monetization. But you have names that have been registered by brands. So for example, BMW, MTN, for example, and I don't think they will be available for everyone out there to register them. So their motivation for those names are very different. So people register their names for different reasons, and they're justified. Some of them are to protect their brand, some are to localize policies, some of them are for security reasons, for example, banks. And therefore, because of this diverse and very wide needs of the global community, they made a decision to recommend that expansion even be done further, so that those names, or those people that would like to register names, also have a new opportunity to do the same in this coming round. So this is a very difficult slide to present. And the most difficult part of it is the third bullet here, which is how much will it cost you to apply for a TLD. But before I get to how much, who can apply? Anyone who is not an individual. So you have to be a corporate entity of whichever nature, whether not-for-profit, governmental or intergovernmental organization, as long as you are a corporate and you can enter into valid contracts. So you cannot apply for a TLD, top-level name, as an individual. So Bob cannot apply, but Bob Incorporated can apply for a TLD. When will this application happen? We are projecting that we'll open to receive applications in 2026 and the April timeline. And at the moment, we have no reason to doubt that that deadline still is valid. And therefore, we are looking forward to opening this round for the global internet community to apply for names of their choice in April. How much does it cost you to apply for a domain name? In 2012, the fee here was $185,000. In 2026, the application fee has been set at $227,000. And this is, Lawrence always likes reminding me that this is not Naira. This is USD for context. And to amplify the fact that is this reach, is this within reach, is this affordable, is this even something that this region can be part of? So it is an expensive undertaking. And in the wisdom of the community, when coming up with these final proposals, they also insisted that the cost of implementing the program has to be borne by those that are applying to utilize the process. And there's a lot of questions in terms of why would this be this expensive? Where will this money go? So we have a whole booklet, I should say, on fees that tries to really distill where this money and how this money will be used. Essentially, it goes into what we are calling evaluation panels. The decisions, and you will see the entire process of an application, what happens from the day you apply to the day you have this name alive, if a name can be alive. I don't know whether alive and live is one and the same thing, but you understand what I mean. So from the day you apply to the day the name goes live, there's a lot of things in between. And most of the time, those processes have to be paid for. So the cost of those processes, which you will see here in detail, is funded by this fee. And it's not supposed to come from any other funding process within ICANN. So we'll come to that, but as we speak, this is the fee for the next round. And how will you apply? So we are working on an online system for everyone that we are calling TAMS, TLD Application Management System, through which the entire application process and interaction with your application will be happening. So I know we have a lot of questions waiting for me around this, but I'll be happy to engage on that. I should add that the application window will remain for 12 to 15 weeks when it opens. So keep that in mind as we go a little bit down on this journey. Now, in terms of case studies, this segment, I just wanted to quickly show you, at a very high level, how in the last round, names have been used innovatively. So Microsoft, for example, is a domain name today, and if you're using Microsoft services, maybe you'll notice that you are using a .Microsoft name for all their services. Amsterdam is a city, and they have another interesting use case on how they have, the motivation to use their name as a TLD for specific services to the community in Amsterdam. Bank is an interesting case because its target is very specific. It's not looking for everyone, it's looking for banks, and they are implementing policies that are relevant for banking institutions. And that's what they're promising their target consumers, that if you register in our name, then we will implement by default the following security measures that are really relevant for banks, because they understand what is common to banks largely. So that's really their projection, their image, and their selling point for that particular TLD. And goes without saying that in the room is .Africa, which obviously I am not competent enough to talk about when the real .Africa is in the room. But today, this is also available to you, and it has got its own position and posture on where it makes sense to register .Africa. All these are today available for us courtesy of the last expansion. Okay? Now, going back to the cost that I've highlighted, and whenever I talk about that slide, I think the next question is, or the next sentiment that I do get is, this is not for Africa, or I don't think this is meant for us. Well, I should say that, probably reiterate that in the last round, that same fee was 185,000, and I don't think that was any cheaper. Can this be done in Africa, or can we get applications from Africa? And something that I know Lucky will comment about, because he had a real experience going through this, not just for one name, but for, not for two, but for very many names that are actually live today. So I do feel and believe that, yes, there is a case or a business case for more names in Africa. It only depends on why are you applying, or what is your motivation. I always ask this question differently. What is the cost of not applying? I think we quickly look at, well, this is really huge. I was listening to a presentation from some brands in India, and they were asking themselves, what is the cost of a 30-second advert on YouTube for some of them? And when you start crunching the numbers on where some of our spend go to, depending on what is the context of the organization, then probably this starts becoming maybe even cheaper. So it really depends on how you look at it and your context. Is it expensive? It is very expensive. What is the cost of not doing it? You can, depending on who you are, you can also do the cost-benefit analysis and come to a decision. But fact remains that this is an opportunity. Now, there's the cost of not doing it, and the cost of whatever it is that is an asset to you being held by someone else. So I come from Kenya, and therefore I can use an example in Kenya, just in case I could have challenges at the airport when I leave here. So I'll for safety reasons, I'll use examples in Kenya, isn't it? So we've heard about M-Pesa. It's a money transfer solution. I'm sure we have the same here. And it is associated with a particular company for us. So for a moment, think about that same product being a domain name. And today, the reality is that name is available. I mean, in theory, I can apply for it. Anyone can apply for it. So to my point about what is the cost of not applying, so assuming Safaricom or Vodacom, who are the owners of M-Pesa, don't bother about this as a TLD, and I apply for it, and in theory I get it, one part, or actually their competition applies for it and gets it, which is a little bit more complicated, but also in theory very possible. Which one will be cheaper for Safaricom at the end of the day? So this is an important decision point, and most of the time I do advise that costs are not one perspective. It is also important to look at the cost of not doing something. In the previous session, Carlos was talking about participation, whether in GAC, whether in CCNSO, and I think the cost element is always there. What is the cost of participation? But what is the cost of not participating? If I take the name .Africa, for example, if Africa was not interested completely, it is also possible that someone could have applied for that name. And if Africa was not interested completely, that name would be with a different operator today, isn't it? Now, we don't have a process of deregistering a name that is live. All our processes can only intervene before that name goes live. But once it goes live, there is no turning back. Maybe that is the next policy that you people should come up with. But as it stands today, unless whoever is operating, something terrible happens to a current operator. And if it is a gTLD, we will just take that name to an escrow operator, maybe, or someone will take it up. But we will rarely have a name going offline. A ccTLD, maybe. A gTLD, very difficult. One of the rules today of names that are not available for registrations are, for example, country names. So you can't register .Ghana. And you can also not register a name, obviously, that is already registered, so you can't apply for that. But you can also not register a capital city without the consent of the respective government or authority. Those are safeguards that are built in. But any other name, obviously, in theory, is available. It could be a trademark, it could be a brand, and depending on who has applied for it, there could be multiple applications for a particular name. You will then defend your application. But there is no guarantee that no one else can apply for M-Pesa, for example, because M-Pesa is known to be Safaricom's. It could be a favorite, cuisine in India. I would say that's the M-Pesa I'm registering. So, who says that that cannot be valid? It could be, an important destination maybe in India. So their M-Pesa is, this destination that they know about, or culture. So any other name, obviously, is a debate. And that's why we have those panels to consider such cases where we have contention in names. Okay? That was me digressing. But I would like to come back to your views on whether this is expensive and how expensive it is. I'm just trying to paint a picture of the other aspect of what, as countries, as corporates, as brand owners, as trademark owners, you need also to consider when you make this decision on whether not to apply for names or to apply for names. The decision is yours. But also, most importantly, because of the recognition of that cost at the same time, while the community was deciding to make this cost be recoverable from applicants, hence its high cost, they also recommended a support program to support especially underserved regions that would apply and would find this expensive. So part of the next round program is an inbuilt process that we are calling applicant support that is meant to discount that application fee. And it targets very specific categories of organizations or applicants. And if you are successfully evaluated to apply for applicant support, then you will get at least 85% discount on the fee, okay? So applicant support has got two components of support. There is financial support and non-financial support. The non-financial element is largely around, capacity building, mentorship, and really materials to help a new entrant be able to successfully apply and operate their name. The financial support is meant to reduce that cost. So from the 227, you can discount it to 85% if you are successful under applicant support. But there's a caveat in this applicant support because you have to fall within these 4 categories of organizations for you to be considered for support. You are either a not-for-profit organization, you are either an IGO, which is an intergovernmental organization, say WACREN, Africa Union, East Africa Community, or other IGOs as recognized by treaties, or indigenous communities group. So in our country, we have people called Maasai, which you might have heard about. If they have an outfit that represents them and they would like the name .Maasai, for example, then they are eligible for this discount. And then lastly, we have a category that we are calling small medium enterprise organizations in developing economies, which is every economy other than Europe and North America. How do we define medium and small enterprises? The rules that we are going to work with for this round has put a cap for medium and small enterprises at $5 million of annual turnover. So if you are an entity whose annual turnover is up to or less than 5 million USD, then you also qualify for applicant support. So these are the 4 categories of organizations that are eligible to apply and to be considered for applicant support. Now, applying for applicant support means you want to apply for a top-level name. That's really what it means. And it still then begs the question that you need to probably better understand the entire process, because once you go through applicant support, the next step is to apply for the TLD actually in April next year. So applying for applicant support is really intending to apply for a top-level domain, and that's very important to understand. So evaluations will be on a number of areas, of course, public responsibility, financial need, and financial viability. So applicant support has been on for the last almost 12 months. It is actually closing next month, as Yavi was saying. We opened applicant support on 19 November 2024, and we intend to close it on 19 November this year. So in a little bit less than a month, okay? To date, we have a number of applications that have come from different regions. And what you see here, this is as at 22nd of September, a little bit, a few weeks ago. You have from Africa 10 applicants from 6 countries. So we are keeping these applicants confidential. So you didn't know, the intention is really not to disclose who they are, but to also give you a sense of how we are performing in terms of interest, if I could put it that way, compared to the rest of the region. So you have, I think, the highest numbers coming from the Asia-Pacific region, with 18 applicants spanning, I think, 7 countries there. And we were hoping very hard that we will not have, the Global West, Europe and North America, even though the program does not discriminate as long as you are within those organizations that I did mention, the 4 categories. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Europe, North America, or in Africa. The opportunity is available for all of those categories of organizations, but our focus and resources in creating awareness about this has been in the underserved regions, and most importantly in Africa, the reason why we are here today. So this is how we are performing today. You still have a little bit of a month to make a decision if you would want to take advantage of this particular opportunity and benefit from a discount. It closes on 19 November 2025. So the next segment, I'll just highlight very quickly some of the resources that are available at your disposal. I think the first one is this graphic that I hinted about in terms of what will be the applicant journey for this next round, so that we put into perspective this cost that is involved in applying. As I indicated, it is a very extensive evaluation process with a lot of players, and probably I'll use a few examples here. So in the last round we had, so for example, so before I go to the example, we have on my extreme left, this is my left, so it is your right, is application submission period open. I don't know if you can see it very clearly. Again, these slides are available for distribution, so feel free to come for them if you need that. So you start the application from this is your left as well, and you end on delegation. The last point is delegation. Okay, that's when the name goes live. And at that point, there is no going back once it goes live. In between, there are a number of things. And I wanted just to point maybe two critical ones. There's something called reveal day, okay? So the window opens for 12 to 15 weeks, as I indicated. We receive applications. Everyone is invited to apply. You make your payments. After that, the window closes. And then we have something called so we have a replacement period. So you see the first yellow, obviously once we receive the applications, there's some administrative checks that we do just to confirm that an application is complete and all the documentation is in. So that's really done within ICANN. And then we have a reveal day where all names that have been applied for are then visible to the applicants. Okay, why is that important? In this process, there's something called contentions, which is a very, very big deal. And Lucky can talk very eloquently about what it takes. And if this application is expensive, then wait until you get to contention, depending on what name it is, okay? So there's a reveal day, so you see what other names have been applied for. Now in this time, something that is different from last time, there is a very small window for you to change your name. As long as you carried something we're calling a replacement string. So say I've applied for .bob, but because I want to avoid a contention, and I will explain what a contention is, I have said that I'll have a replacement name as Ochieng, okay? So that if I find there's a lot of Bobs, then I'll switch to Ochieng so that I avoid this contention that is ahead, where I can then lose my application altogether, okay? So we have a replacement string. So you look at all applications, and then you make a decision. You have 14 days to do that. After those 14 days, we will then confirm all the applications. So at that point, you cannot change your application. And you have already seen if you are potentially going to be in contention or not. Now, after that, you see the second yellow is the string confirmation day. So this is where these names are published for everyone to see. This is a very important process. And I should add that probably you are not following this process to apply for a domain name, but it is still very relevant for you. Why? This is when you can then see if there are names that, depending on who you are, it could be a country, you could be a brand, you could be, any type of organization. And there's an application that you either agree with strongly or strongly object to. You have a chance to raise that particular feedback, depending on whether you are a government your community. So at this point, we have what we call community input period on this string. So anyone can actually make a comment. If you're a government, you could send what we are calling an early warning that there's a name we have seen and potentially we will have a problem with it. The GAC within ICANN can at this point even write a GAC advice on a name, okay? So essentially we are saying that these names will be published for public input into the names. So you can object, you can support, you can say anything. This feedback will then be taken into consideration by the evaluation panel. So at this point, you are just saying, nothing happens, you just say. And you have potentially around 90 to 115 days to make that particular point on any of those names. And I am stressing here that this doesn't matter whether you have applied for a name or not. And I'm also stressing that once a name is live, it cannot be removed, okay? And I said that one of the rules is that you cannot apply for some names. For example, you cannot apply for the ISO 3166 list, names that are in that list, so country code names, or the three-letter equivalent of those names. Every country has got a three-letter equivalent in the ISO 3166 list. For example, Kenya is KEY. Now, Comoros is COM, okay? But we have .com today, isn't it? And how did that happen? So that was before these rules came into place. Apparently, I think lawyers will remind us, the law does not apply. Is it retro something? Yeah. So today you cannot register .KEY. Any of those letters you are seeing on the ISO 31 list, alpha, I think there's alpha 2 and alpha 3, whatever it is. Those ones are blocked, so you can't apply for them, okay? But you can see that when those rules were not there, this happened. We have .com, which is the three-letter code for Comoros. But we have no process to reverse a name that is live. That's why this is important. So with that, so there's a lot of processes. In terms of contentions, it means that you have more than one applicant for the same name. Essentially, that's what it means. So you have two people or more that have applied for .bob. And in such cases, essentially what happens is that such an application goes through an auction process where you actually outbid the other applicant. This is why this particular point of replacement string was introduced, because if you don't replace your string, you already know that there's potentially a contention ahead, and therefore you are ready and happy to go through that contention to defend your name. In the last round, we had auctions going for, as high as, over $100 million. So it can be very expensive, depending on what name is in contention and who are the applicants behind such names, okay? So that is how the journey will look like. It's quite a long process, and in between we have third-party evaluation panels to make these independent decisions, and not ICANN. Very lastly, this is the timelines that we are talking about. So I've said that applicant support, which is that blue line, has been on since November 19, and we intend to close it 12 months later on November 19 this year. So you still have a window, if you are those organizations that I listed, to apply for applicant support. And you see 2026, which is the red line there, is when we intend to open the round for for submissions. So April 2026, and that window will remain open for at least 15 weeks. With that, I suspect there might be very many questions, but I will just be here. maybe I'll give it to Yavi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. I think we can take a few